Hi, today I'm going to show you how to knit this summer boxy crop top. Let's get started. Please check my description box for all the details. This beautiful crop top knit from bottom to top. First of all, you will knit in round from cast on until the sleeve opening. Once you hit the sleeve opening starts, you will knit in flat. So you have to knit two pieces. And as you can see, front and back exactly same design. So whichever will be the front and back. And the top part, I sew them, leave the enough neck opening. I'll show you each design. This is cherry basket. Underneath of the cherry basket, there is eyelet diamond. As you can see, that's a diamond shape. Then eyelet borders. I did 3 times. It's beautiful borders. Then candle tree. After candle tree, there's the eyelet V shape. Actually, it's upside down. Then cherry basket as well. The key for success is you have to make a plan ahead. And I will talk about it later. This is the yarn I was using. Cast on, multiple of 11 plus 2. This is very important. I made total of 224 cast on. This is not the multiple of 11 plus 2 because I would like to kind of separate front and back even though I'm knitting in round. So 112 for each front and back, which is multiple of 11 plus 2. Because I didn't want that, the cherry basket right on the side. It's really up to you though. Garter stitch after the cast. I'm using magic loop technique because I have a much longer cable. If you have the perfect length of the cable, you don't need to do the magic loop. Anyway, I am going to connect both ends. So I will knit in round. And garter stitch for in round is quite easy. If it's flat, you have to just knit on the right side and wrong side. But in round, one row of all knit and second row will be all purl. And you just have to repeat row number 1 and row number 2. That would be garter stitch in round. And I did total of 3 times, but 3 times wasn't really enough. So it's a little bit curled up at the bottom. So maybe you can repeat few more rows. Cherry basket. Row number 1 and row number 2 will be all knit. I'm not going to tell you every single rows, just the key rows. Row number 3. Bracket means you have to repeat. And I put the 1 marker for mid section. And for this design, you have to kind of finish front and back. So let's start. Rule number 3, repeat of knit 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Knit 2 together. Yarn over, then knit 4. You have to repeat within bracket until last 2 stitch before the mid marker. That's the mid marker. And then knit 2. If you decide you're not going to separate front and back, you don't really have to, worry about anything until the end of this row. But I decide I am going to kind of complete the design, separately, front and back. So whenever I get close to the half mid stitch, I have to complete the, design. So last 2 stitch before the mid marker and knit 2. Then the other half, which is back piece, you have to do same thing again. Rule number 4 was all knit. Now rule number 5. Again, width and bracket is repeat. So repeat of knit 4 to start. And there's one new stitch, which is SSK, slip, slip, knit. Knit 4 to start, then knit 2 together. Yarn over, knit 1, yarn over again, then SSK, which is slip, slip, knit. Then knit 2. You have to repeat width and bracket until 2 stitches before mid marker, and then knit 2. As long as you know knit 2 together in SSK technique, you can do row number 6 till row number 10 following my written pattern. I'm actually doing one more thing, and knit 1, yarn over, and SSK right here. So after this, I am going to jump to row number 11. I meet you on row number 11. Row number 11. There's one new technique, which is make bubble. And I already repeat twice because I just want to see. Anyway, row number 11, repeat of knit 3 and knit 2 together here. Just take your time. Then yarn over, knit 1, then now make bubble. Next stitch, I am going to make bubble. You need to knit 5 stitch in next stitch, which is knit front and back once and actually twice, which creates 4 stitch. There you go. This is second time of knit front and back, then knit one last stitch there to create 5 stitch. Then turn the project, then purl 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This 5 stitch you just create, you know, the knit front and back, you know, and all that. Then turn again. Then leave the first stitch there, and from the second stitch you have to pass that over. It's really tough if you're not getting used to, so just take your time. One stitch over, this is the second stitch, right? And third stitch, pass that over, and fourth and fifth. This is the fifth one, but you only pass the 4 stitch over because the first one you didn't do anything. And now you knit back loop, okay, to finish the bubble. There we go. Then knit 1, yarn over, SSK, and knit 1. And you have to repeat same thing, 2 stitch before the mid marker. And I'll show you how to make a bubble one more time, so don't worry about it. Here comes, there you go. Next stitch, make a bubble. And again, 2 times of knit front and back. 1, that's a knit front, then back. Use same stitch, second time of the knit front and back. It's getting tighter and tighter, so just take your time. This is the back. Then knit front one more time, just a regular knit, to create 5 stitch on right needle. Then turn the project. Then make 5 purl there to use that new, 5 stitch on the right needle. Now left needle, because you just turned. And again, you have to take your time. Then after purl 5, you have to turn again. Then leave the first stitch there, and from the second stitch you have to pass that over to create bubble, and 1 stitch at a time. And if this is really tough, use the cable needle or something. It's much easier, to be really honest. But the problem is, do not drop any stitch from right needle or left needle. You really have to be very careful. That's the last stitch over. There you go. Then knit back loop to finish. There you go. Then just keep, following the pattern. That's it. There are many other ways to make bubble, and you can use whichever you like. However, do not increase or decrease the stitch. Otherwise, the stitch, count change, which means pattern will change. And after this, it's pretty much, easy, same technique, nothing new. So just follow my written pattern until row number 16 to, complete this, design. By the way, this is the top of the bubble, and you really have to knit kind of tight to kind of make it stay there, just like that. So after you make the bubble, next row should be all knit. So you really have to knit tight just above the bubble stitch. One more thing, I add markers every 22 stitch. You can add markers every 11 stitch, but for me that was too much. So I add markers every 22 stitch. Obviously there's 2 extra stitch at the end, but anyway, yeah, at the end that's gotta be 24. Anyway, if you make a mistake, it's easy to figure it out. You did something wrong if you add markers, right? So it's up to you, but I made few mistakes and I had to go back. So after I made a mistake twice, I thought I should. Okay, here is the complete. Then after the cherry basket, I add garter stitch, which is you already learned, row number 1 and row number 2. Repeat until your desired length, but I did total of 2 times repeat, so 4 rows. That's enough for me. And then while you're knitting garter stitch, I have to adjust stitch number for next design. And next design you need cast multiple of 12 plus 1, and the closest number for me was 229. So I decide to add 5 stitch on knitting rows. And here's the thing, every time you change the design, you add or decrease stitch numbers. So you better make a plan way ahead so you don't get confused. Anyway, again, I am going to add 5 stitches total, kind of evenly. So I put the marker there, and to increase, I use the knit front and back technique. It's really up to you, but front and knit front and back is easy enough. Knit front and do not drop the stitch up, then knit one more back. There you go. That's knit front and back. And this time it doesn't really matter the front piece and back piece. Okay, that the whole stitch total should be multiple of 12 plus 1. There you go. That's the garter stitch I made. And while I'm making garter stitch, I already add 5 stitch. So my stitch count is 229 total, which is multiple of 12 plus 1. Now eyelet V-stitch. Row number 1, all knit. Also, every even row has to be all knit. So I meet you at row number 3. Row number 3. knit 4 to start. And this is not with some bracket, so you gotta be very careful. Knit 4 to start. Yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, knit 1, and pass slip stitch over, PSSO. There you go. Then knit 1, knit 2 together, yarn front. Then you repeat. Okay, now bracket, so repeat, knit 7, yarn front, slip 1 purlwise is YFSL1P. Okay, after knit 7, yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, then knit 1. Then PSSO, pass slip stitch over. Then knit 1, knit 2 together, then yarn front until last 4 stitch, which is, the biggie marker. Right there. Here comes end of the row number 3. Knit 2 together, and do not forget the last yarn front. Then knit 4 at the end. And this time I want you to put the yarn front. That's why I didn't want to use the word yarn over. Make sure yarn has to be out front. Then row number 4 was all knit, and row number 5 pretty much same, but I'll show you. Knit 5 to start, and this is not the repeat. After knit 5, yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, knit 2 together, PSSO, then yarn front. Then repeat starts, knit 9. It's very easy. You just have to be careful with yarn front. After knit 9, yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, knit 2 together, and PSSO. Also, yarn front at the end of the bracket. Please do not forget. And you repeat until last 5, and last 5 should be knit 5. And row number 6, 7, 8 are all knit, so I meet you at row 9. Row 9, knit 1 to start, then repeat. Repeat of knit 2 together, yarn front, knit 7. After knit 7, yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, knit 1, then PSSO, then lastly knit 1. And the pattern kind of changed little by little, and you really have to read pattern carefully. And you can't really add the markers in this pattern, so you really have to be careful. Row number 11, again, similar pattern, but changing. So you have to be careful. That's all I can say. But you know, the pattern itself is very straightforward. And this time, the repeat starts yarn front, slip one purl. There you go. Then knit two together and PSSO. Then this yarn front is tricky. I try to, do the yarn front slip one purl wise, instead of just yarn front. I just want you to be aware the wording sounds similar, but again, you have to distinguish next stitches just a yarn front or yarn front slip one purl wise or not. Anyway, this is the last two stitch and PSSL. Then row number 12 is all knit. Then complete this design. So I did total of 2 times of row number 1 to row number 12, then 1 time of row number 1 to row number 8. So the V shape is kind of 5 rows total. Again, this is up to you. Because of the length you want total, I thought maybe this is the time I should stop. So if you want to, knit longer, you can actually add a couple more, rows. It's really up to you. Then garter row. I did again total of 2 times row number 1 to row number 2, which means 4 rows. And again, I have to adjust the stitch number for next design. And next design, you need a stitch number multiple of 13. And I had 229 for this V-shaped eyelet. So the closest number was 221. This is the multiple of 13, which means I have to decrease 8 stitch total evenly. And how to decrease? Just use the knit two together technique. That's it. And again, knit two together technique, which means you have to decrease on knitting rows. The garter stitch, row number 1 is all knit and row number 2 is all purl. So, knit two together on knit rows. And, depend on the stitch. Some people need to add, stitch, then use the knit front and back technique. If you want to decrease some stitch, just knit two together. It's really up to your, project and plan. Here comes knit two together, 1 decrease, and you have to decrease evenly because you will ended up, split in half. Candle tree. My stitch count is 221, has to be multiple of 13. Row number 1 till row number 4 are all knit. And even row number has to be all knit. So I meet you at row number 5, but before you go to the row number 5, I want you to tell you one more thing, which is adding marker, because this time you knit, every 13 stitch, group of 13. So I add markers every 26 stitch because, I didn't want to add too many markers So every 26 stitch would be ideal for me. All right, it's really up to you, but if I knit the group of 11 or 13, I would like to add markers because it's easier. Row number 5, repeat of knit 4, very similar to other design too. So it's quite easy. Knit 4 and knit 2 together. There's no new technique here. Yarn front, knit 1, yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, knit 1, PSSO, and knit 4. That's it. You just have to repeat until begin marker. And row number 6 is all knit. There you go. And row number 7. Again, maybe I don't really have to show you, but I will anyway. Repeat of knit 3, then knit 2 together now, I just did, and knit yarn front and knit 3, yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, knit 1, PSSO, knit 3. You have to repeat with some bracket until the begin marker. And row number 8 is all knit. Then row number 9. There you go. Again, it's easy. Repeat of knit 2, knit 2 together, and yarn front. You gotta do one more time. Knit 2 together, yarn front, then knit 1, then yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, knit 1, PSSO, and you do one more time. That's the first PSSO, then yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, then knit 1, and this is the second time PSSO, then knit 2. You just have to repeat. And after that, you can actually do your own, follow my written pattern, and repeat row number 1 to row number 14 until your desired length. I did total of 2 times. It's up to you. If you want to make longer, you can repeat 3 times, 4 times, or if you want to make shorter for kid size, you can just do 1 time. It's really up to you. So this is the reason why you have to kind of plan ahead. And for me, I did only 2 times because I was just about reaching to the sleeve opening. So I kind of did 1 time and look and measure, and I thought maybe I should do 1 more. So I did the total of 2. Again, I measure from top to bottom. There was 10 inches already. There we go. So I thought maybe I should start, spread in half, and make the the sleeve opening. So you have to kind of count. My stitch count was 221. So obviously you can divide it by 2. The front is 110 and back is 111. So you have to match the stitch count. Also, you have to think about the next design, right? Next design is border eyelet, and the stitch count you need is multiple of 2 plus 1, which is odd number. So I add one stitch to front piece to create odd number. So the both front and back I have 111 after I increase one stitch. So total of 222 stitch. Also, I add markers for first 5 stitch and last 5 stitch for both front and back because I would like to make a garter stitch there. So 111 minus 10 is 101, which is odd number. So you can do the eyelet border design. And this type of the project, you have to count stitches as many as you want because you don't want to make mistake. All right? Anyway, let's start. This is the front piece for me. So first 5 stitch and last 5 stitch, always knit on right side and wrong side. Now you're going to knit in flat. So you have to be very careful. Anyway, I changed the marker because it's easier for me. And then I'm doing garter stitch right now. And I just did the knit front and back and increase one stitch. So now front piece is 111. There you go. So after that, I just knit until the end of the front piece. I just finished the front piece. And now you have to knit back piece. But now you need different needle because again, now you're knitting separately. So you have to kind of, let the back piece rest. So you can actually use the scrap yarn if you don't have the extra needle. But I do have extra needle, so I am going to knit back piece with other set of the needle. Then leave it right there for a little while. If you don't have the extra needle, you can just knit. Then use the scrap yarn to, transfer. Here is my BOXY summer top. I knitted it before. And I'm just showing you. I knit 2 different, square that time, and then I sew them. And you're at the bottom of the sleeve opening right there. Now you try to spread 2 pieces from 1 pieces. There you go. Then create, 2 pieces front and back. And edge of the sleeve, I would like to do the garter stitch. And the top part you have to sew. The summer top you're looking at right now, around the sleeve it's curled up because I didn't want to use the garter stitch for the shoulder. It's really up to you. And after I complete each design, I add garter stitch, but not this time because next design is eyelet border. It's border, same type of the garter. So, I thought maybe I shouldn't add garter stitch because it's similar. But again, it's up to you. If you want to add more length, you can do that too. Anyway, I'm just telling you the first and last 5 stitch will be on it, on right side and wrong side because you're knitting in flat now. Let's start. Again, this is right side on it and wrong side on it. Easy, straightforward. Eyelet border, multiple of 2 plus 1. I have 111 stitch. Row 1 to row 3 all knit. Again, this is the reason why I didn't want to add garter stitch before the border design, because the row 1 to row 3 all knit, which means pretty much garter stitch. So I didn't want to add more garter stitch. And again, I'm knitting wrong side now, and back piece don't touch, until you finish the front piece. Okay, so just all knit and meet you at row number 4. Row number 4. The first 5 and last 5 all knit. I'm not including those 10 stitches in my pattern. Okay, so please be careful. Row number 4 is wrong side, but the garter stitch, it doesn't really matter. Always knit 5, and after the marker, the pattern starts. Here comes, slide the marker, and repeat off, easy. Purl 2 together, then Y or N is yarn around the needle. Okay, so purl 2 together and yarn around the needle. It's not just a yarn over. Around the needle and come back to front. Then purl 2 together. Then one more time, yarn around the needle, then come back to front. It's not just a yarn over. And you just have to repeat purl 2 together and yarn around the needle until last one stitch. And before one last stitch, you have to do yarn around the needle. And before one stitch before the marker, okay? Here comes last purl 2 together and one last stitch there left, and yarn around the needle first before the purl 1. There we go. Then after the marker, you have to knit 5. That's it. And row number 5, 6, 7 are all knit. And then last row, which is row number 8, is all purl. And you repeat row number 1 to row number 8 until your desired length. I did total of 3 times. This is very straightforward pattern. Also, you can adjust the the length easily, because there's only 8 rows and easy enough. So you have to kind of make a plan and adjust the length here. There you go. That's the one border eyelet. After I finish border eyelet design, I did stockinette stitch for next 3 rows, which is right side on knit, wrong side or purl, then right side on knit. Next design, you start with wrong side. And I just did the border eyelet, so I'm not going to add garter stitch. Same reason. So you have to finish knit row, which is right side. Then you can start from wrong side. And while you're doing stockinette stitch, you have to adjust the number. And I need stitch count multiple of 6 plus 2. And the closest number for me was 99 because I already have 101 in between those 2 markers. So, which means I decrease 2 stitch with knit 2 together method to create 99 stitch total. Then you can start next design with multiple of 6 plus 2 and wrong side. So this is all set. And next design will be diamond eyelet. Again, my stitch count without the garter stitch, 99 stitch. Wrong side, all knit. Straight forward. By the way, in between designs, you have to pick closest number to adjust to go on next design because you really want to make straight square as much as possible. And if you want to add another design, you can do that. You just have to be very careful that, pick the right stitch count. That's about it. Row number 2, right side. Purl 1 and repeat of yarn round the needle, then purl 2 together. Very similar to border eyelet. Pretty much same technique. Yarn around and purl 2 together. And row number 3 till row number 5, follow my instruction because all knit and purl. That's it. And row number 6, right side, repeat of knit 4. And this technique is similar to, the other design. So I'm not going to worry about that. Yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, knit 1, and PSSO. You have to repeat width and bracket until last 3. Then knit 3. Last 3 means 3 stitches before the marker. PSSO. Then row number 7 is all purl. Row number 8, knit 2 to start. And repeat of knit 2 together. Yarn front, knit 1, yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, knit 1, PSSO, then knit 1. You have to repeat within bracket again until one last stitch, then knit 1. Super easy. Row number 10, right side again, knit 1, knit 2 together, and yarn front, then repeat starts. I'm not going to tell you, every detail. You can actually read the my written pattern. Just read carefully. That's all I can say. After this, just follow my written instruction. This design complete on row number 16, and I repeated only once row number 1 till row number 16, and you just repeat as many as you want until you hit your desired length. I did total of 1 time of row number 1 till row number 16, then row number 1 till row number 5 additional to create that, the border on top of the diamond. Here, I just finished the row number 16, and I didn't really like the finishing, diamond, so I add the border as well. So I add another 5 row, just like this. And then next 2 rows, or knit on right side and or purl on wrong side, stockinette, stitch. Then garter stitch for 4 rows, which is or knit on right side and wrong side. Again, after the diamond design, I did stockinette stitch for 2 rows. Then garter stitch, which is or knit on right and wrong side for 4 rows. And while you're, knitting between, the designs, adjust stitch number to multiple of 11 plus 2. I'm gonna add cherry basket again. So I already have 99 stitch, which is multiple of 11. So I add 2 stitch, which is knit front and back technique to make 101 stitch total. Then I did cherry basket in flat 1 time, and I add pattern in flat at the very bottom, so do not use the pattern in round. It's different. Then after the cherry basket, I did all knit 1 row, all purl 1 row, then start garter stitch for 10 rows. Now I have 17 inches from top to bottom. Then I add 10 rows of garter stitch. About, 1.5, 2 inch, somewhere around there. Then the sleeve opening should be 9 inch total. That's actually the big enough for the sleeve as well, but it's really up to you. If you want to have, the bigger sleeve opening, you can actually add more rows. And then you do same thing on the back side. There you go. After the cherry basket, I add 10 rows of the garter stitch like that. There you go. Beautiful. And I did the already cast off, and I'll show you how to cast off later. And there you go, the back part. If you use the scrap yarn to hold all the stitch, you can actually transfer all the stitch onto the needle and then start all over again. And you remember where you stop, right? After the candle tree. So you have to do all knit and then adjust the number and everything. You already know how many stitch you have to decrease or increase, so you just do exactly same thing. You don't want to add or decrease any extra. Okay, you just attach the new ball of yarn and start all over again. And I use different color of yarn front and back because I thought it was more fun. Sometimes I'm gonna wear this way, that way. I didn't want to use the completely same color of yarn. It's up to you again, right? So after you do the back piece, you just do the cast off, and you have to cast off loosely. You don't really want a tight cast off. You don't really have to use one size bigger needle or anything like that, but just loosely. And it's easy, just knit and cast off, and knit next one and cast off. That's about it. And after the front and back piece is done, you just have to sew the shoulder line. And first of all, you put the clip like that, and make sure the head neck opening is big enough for your head, right? And both sides same length. And if you decide, now you have to turn the project inside out, because you have to sew them together, right side together like that. And for me, from the edge, about 4 inches, I sew together. There you go. Right side together. And make sure all the alignment is all good. Don't pull too hard or anything like that. Right? There you go. Right side together. Make sure. And with the tapestry needle, you just have to sew the ladder stitch to secure. And to start, I actually sew a few times, maybe at least 2 times, to secure really well. There you go. And go next stitch, and then the corner, then next stitch, and yeah, the stitch one you just came from, and then go through next stitch and go to the stitch you just came from. There you go. Then you just do this until your desired length. That's pretty much it. I really like this BOXY summer top. easy enough because you just knit the square pretty much, right? But in between designs, you have to adjust the stitches. That's the most difficult part. You have to think, right? Because if you mess with stitch number, the pattern will go wrong, right? So otherwise this is very basic knitting. There we go. After you knit the shoulder line, turn inside out, and this is it. It's beautiful summer top. And again, you can make it longer or shorter. Here is the sleeve hem. There you go. I really like big sleeve opening here. Beautiful. I love it. And if you don't need the sleeve hem, you don't have to do the garter on the edge of the sleeve. It's really up to you. This is completely customized. And again, if you struggle with the adjusting stitch count in between designs, please let me know. Leave the comment below. I will help you. It's worth to try. That's about it for today. Enjoy knitting.